It was a bright Sunday morning, and the church lobby was filled with well-dressed elders, chatting softly after their meeting. The air smelled of coffee and old wooden pews. People were smiling, laughing quietly, waiting for the guest pastor to arrive. That's when the front door creaked open, and Mariah Jameson stepped inside. She wore a plain black dress, her hands folded in front of her, her eyes unsure but steady. Some heads turned. A few faces froze. Sister Evelyn's sharp eyes locked onto her first. "Mariah?" Evelyn's voice cut through the room like a blade. "What are you doing here?" Mariah took a breath. "I came to ask for prayers for my mother, and maybe to rejoin the choir, if you'll have me." The room fell quiet. Then came the whispers. Harsh. Judgmental. "Isn't she the one who got pregnant at 17? She disappeared after that. Did she even say who the father was?" Sister Evelyn stepped forward, arms crossed. "You think you can walk in here after all these years like nothing happened? After the shame you brought on your family and this church?" Mariah's face flushed. "I've changed. I've worked hard. I've raised my son the right way. I'm not asking for applause, just grace." Deacon Harold shook his head slowly. "This is a house of God, not a place for people who couldn't stay on the right path." The words stung. Mariah's lips trembled, but she didn't speak. Her eyes scanned the room. Faces she once knew now turned cold. Her hands tightened at her sides. She nodded slowly, her heart heavy. "I understand," she whispered. She turned to leave. But just then, the secretary rushed in, slightly out of breath. "The guest pastor is here," she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's early." The doors to the sanctuary opened wide. Every head turned. The guest pastor stepped in. It was Mariah. She walked back in, straighter now, stronger, her voice calm but clear. "Good morning," she said. The room froze. Mariah was only 17 when her whole world changed. She was a quiet girl then, known for her soft singing voice in the church choir and her respectful manner. Everyone thought she was the perfect church girl, until she got pregnant. The father was Jason, the choir director's son. He was older, charming, and married. At first, he acted like he cared. But when Mariah told him about the baby, he denied everything. He said she was lying. He said she was trying to ruin his life. And when rumors started to spread, he stayed quiet while she faced it all alone. The church was no comfort. People whispered behind her back. Some gave her cold looks. Others didn't even hide their anger. They asked her why she wouldn't say who the father was. They called her a bad example to the youth. They said she had embarrassed her family and the church. Her parents were ashamed. One night, her mother packed her bags and sent her to live with her aunt in Texas. No goodbye hug. No kind words. Just a train ticket and silence. She left with tears in her eyes and a baby growing inside her. In Texas, life wasn't easy. Her aunt, Aunt Lucille, was kind but firm. Mariah cleaned houses during the day and worked late nights at a small diner. She used any spare time to study online, pushing herself to earn a high school diploma. Then came college. She worked part-time jobs to afford it, washing dishes, folding clothes at a store, even babysitting. She studied theology because something in her heart still believed in faith, even if people had failed her. Her pain gave her strength. Her silence gave her a voice. She wanted to help people like her, those who had been cast aside. By the time she turned 30, she had earned 2 degrees and become an ordained pastor. Not just in title, but in spirit. She had given sermons in small towns, led support groups, and worked with women in shelters. She found healing through helping others heal. Now, at 32, she was back in Atlanta, not to seek revenge, but because her mother was sick. Cancer. The doctor said it wasn't looking good. So Mariah came home quietly to care for her, staying in the old house they once shared, now filled with silence and distant memories. One day, she received an email from the church, the same one that had turned its back on her. They were looking for a guest pastor. A bishop in Texas had recommended her name, not knowing the full story behind her past. They just knew her as Pastor Mariah Jameson, a rising voice in the ministry. Mariah was surprised. She didn't reply right away. Her heart was still unsure. But then she thought about her younger self, the girl who walked out of that church feeling like trash. And she thought about other girls still sitting in church pews, afraid to speak, ashamed to be seen. So she said yes. She didn't tell anyone who she was. Not yet. She just accepted the invitation and prepared her message. But before her first Sunday sermon, she wanted to visit the church quietly. She hoped to pray for her mother and maybe ask about joining the choir again, just to feel that connection to her past. That's when she walked into the lobby, and they saw her not as the woman she had become, but as the girl they once shamed. And in front of everyone, they insulted her again. Now, everything was different. The church didn't know that the woman they tried to humiliate was the same person they had invited to preach. They didn't know that she carried both their rejection and her calling. They didn't know that the girl they had pushed out was now a woman who had returned, not just to forgive, but to lead. Mariah wasn't there to prove a point. She was there because people needed healing. But now, standing before them, knowing what the next Sunday the church was full. People had heard that a special guest pastor was coming, someone young and highly respected. The choir was practicing, ushers were setting up chairs, and the elders were dressed in their finest suits and hats. Sister Evelyn sat in the front row with Deacon Harold beside her. Jason stood near the choir, checking his phone, trying to look calm. No one knew what to expect, but everyone was excited. Then the sanctuary doors opened, and Mariah walked in. This time, she wore a soft blue dress and carried a Bible close to her heart. Her steps were steady. Her eyes didn't look down. She walked up to the pulpit like she belonged there, because now she did. Whispers began to rise through the church. Wait, is that Mariah? That's the same girl from the other day. She's the guest pastor? Sister Evelyn's mouth dropped open. Deacon Harold leaned forward, his eyes squinting. Jason went pale, but Mariah didn't flinch. She looked out at the congregation and smiled gently. Good morning, church, she said, her voice calm and sure. I'm honored to be here today. I know some of you may be surprised to see me, and that's okay. Today's message is about grace, healing, and truth. Some people shifted in their seats. Others leaned in, curious. Mariah opened her Bible. I want to talk about the prodigal son, but not just him. I want to talk about the people who stayed home and thought they were better than the one who left. I want to talk about what it means to be truly forgiven and to forgive others. As she preached, her voice grew stronger. She spoke about pain, shame, and second chances. She didn't name names. She didn't bring up the past directly, but her words touched something deep. One woman in the back started crying quietly. A young man near the front nodded slowly. Even some of the elders sat still, listening closely. When the sermon ended, the room was silent for a moment. Then slowly, people began to clap. After service, Mariah stood by the exit, shaking hands and hugging people. Some were kind, some were quiet, but everyone knew something had shifted. Jason waited until most of the crowd had left. Then he walked up to her, pretending to smile. You've grown, he said quietly, eyes cold behind his words. Didn't expect to see you here, standing up there like some kind of saint. Mariah looked at him calmly. I'm not a saint, Jason. Just someone who refused to stay broken. He leaned in closer, his voice sharp. You think you're smart, but don't forget, I still have a reputation here. People trust me. They don't know what you're trying to do. I'm not trying to do anything, she said, but truth has a way of coming out, doesn't it? Jason's smile faded. You better be careful, Mariah. Some things are better left buried. She didn't answer. She just looked at him, her eyes steady. That night, as she sat at home with her mother sleeping in the next room, Mariah thought about Jason's words. For years, she had kept his secret to protect her son, to avoid more drama. But now he was threatening her again, just like he did when she was a scared teenager. Maybe it was time to stop being silent. Maybe it was time to let the truth speak for itself. The following week, everything began to change. At first, the church tried to act normal. A few members praised Mariah's sermon. Some even told her it moved them. But behind her back, the whispering started again. She's just doing this for attention. Why would she come back now? She still never said who the father is. Sister Evelyn called a private meeting with the church elders. She was furious. I don't care what title she has, Evelyn said, slamming her palm on the table. She's stirring up old drama. This church has worked too hard to move forward. Deacon Harold nodded. And now people are asking questions. About Jason. About that time years ago. We can't have that. Jason sat in the corner, silent at first. Then he spoke, calm and cold. Maybe it's time we remind everyone who she really is. She's not the innocent one here. That night, someone posted an anonymous message in a church group chat. It said, Our guest pastor was once a teenage girl who slept with a married man and refused to name the father. Are we sure she's who we want preaching to our children? No one said it was from Jason, but Mariah knew. She found out when a younger woman from the choir, Layla, showed her the message on her phone. Pastor Mariah, Layla whispered, I'm so sorry. I don't believe it. I just thought you should know. Mariah stared at the screen. Her hands shook, but she didn't cry. She thanked Layla, then went to sit in her car, needing air. She thought about all the work she had done to rebuild her life. All the nights she stayed up studying. All the days she worked 2 jobs to feed her son. And now, after all that, they were trying to pull her down again. That night, her mother, Gloria, noticed her quiet mood. What's wrong? Gloria asked gently from the sofa, her voice weaker these days. Mariah hesitated, then told her. Her mother closed her eyes, sighed, then said, Maybe it's time you told the truth. Mariah looked at her, surprised. You really think people would believe me? Gloria coughed, her hand trembling slightly. It's not about them believing. It's about you being free. For a long moment, Mariah said nothing. Then she whispered, He has a good life now. A family. A good name. But you don't, Gloria said. You've carried the shame for both of you. And it's not fair. Mariah nodded slowly. The next Sunday, she returned to the pulpit, standing taller than before. She gave a powerful message about truth and courage. She didn't call out names, but she spoke about fear, about hiding for too long, about how silence protects those who harm. After service, the choir girl Layla found her again. "I want to tell you something," Layla said. "Jason, he messaged me a few weeks ago. He said things that made me uncomfortable. He said I reminded him of someone he used to know." Mariah's chest tightened. "Did he touch you?" Layla shook her head quickly. "No, but I didn't like the way he talked. It felt wrong." Mariah felt sick. It was starting again, just like with her. Jason wasn't just a memory from her past. He was still a threat. Later that day, she went to the head pastor, Pastor Milton, and told him everything. The pregnancy, the lies, the threats, Jason's behavior with Layla, everything. Pastor Milton sat back, quiet for a while. Then he said, "This is serious, Mariah. We need to investigate. But you should know, Jason's father is one of our major donors, and this will divide the church." "I'm not trying to divide anything," she said. "I just don't want another girl to go through what I did." He nodded slowly. "I'll pray on it." Word began to spread. Quiet at first, then louder. Some people believed her. Others called her bitter, said she was trying to destroy a man's life out of revenge. Jason's wife, Monica, showed up at Mariah's house one evening, red-eyed and shaking. "Why now?" Monica asked. "Why are you doing this to my family?" "I'm not doing anything to your family," Mariah said softly. "Your husband did this. I'm just telling the truth." Monica broke down. "I knew something wasn't right, but I ignored it. I told myself he was just busy or stressed." Mariah opened the door wider. "You want to come in? Sit down." Monica hesitated. Then she nodded. The two women sat at the kitchen table for over an hour, not as enemies, but as two people finally seeing the truth. But outside, things were getting worse. Some members demanded Mariah be removed from speaking again. Others defended her. The church board was split. Jason stayed silent in public, but tried to twist the story in private, claiming Mariah was trying to ruin him for attention. He even told someone she made it all up, that she had a wild phase, and was now pretending to be a saint. Mariah felt the pressure mounting. She wasn't sure who was truly on her side. Some old friends stopped replying to her messages. She saw her picture going around on social media, edited with nasty captions. But she also received letters, quiet messages of support. Women who said they'd been through the same. Young girls who said her sermon gave them hope. One letter came from a woman who wrote, "Thank you. You reminded me that I'm not alone." Mariah held that letter tight one night as she sat by her mother's bedside. Gloria was sleeping, her breath shallow. Mariah whispered, "I don't know what's going to happen, Mom, but I won't stay silent anymore." And in the quiet of that moment, she felt a kind of peace, not because everything was okay, but because she had finally told the truth. Now, whatever came next, she was ready. The church called a special meeting. It was a closed-door session for elders, board members, and key leaders. Everyone sat stiffly in the fellowship hall, the air thick with tension. Mariah had been invited to speak. Jason was there too, sitting beside his father, arms crossed, jaw tight. Pastor Milton stood in front of the group. "We've heard many things these past 2 weeks. Before we move forward, we owe it to everyone, especially the people involved, to hear the truth." Mariah stood slowly. Her heart was pounding, but her hands didn't shake. She looked around the room, meeting eyes that had once judged her, ignored her, or dismissed her. "I didn't come back to cause drama," she said quietly. "I came because my mother is sick, and because I was invited." She paused. "But the past has a way of following us, especially when it's never been dealt with." She looked straight at Jason. "I got pregnant when I was 17, and the father of my child was a man I trusted, a man who told me to keep quiet, who denied everything when I needed him most." Jason scoffed and shook his head. "This is ridiculous." Mariah kept speaking, calm and clear. "You were 23. I was a teenager. You were married, and you were supposed to be a leader, but you took advantage of me, and then you left me to carry the shame alone." Gasps filled the room. Jason's father tried to speak, but Pastor Milton raised his hand for silence. Mariah continued, "I never told anyone because I didn't want to destroy your family. I didn't want my son to grow up knowing his father didn't care. But now I see how silence protected the wrong person." Jason jumped up, his voice sharp. "She's lying. There's no proof. She's making this up because she's bitter." Mariah didn't flinch. "Do you want proof?" she said. "Because I took a paternity test last week. Your son, Micah, is 15 now, and I finally told him the truth. He agreed to take the test. I have the results." She pulled an envelope from her bag and handed it to Pastor Milton. He opened it, read it silently, then looked up. "It's a match," he said softly. "Jason, you are the father." The room erupted. People gasped, murmured, covered their mouths. Jason's father stood up, eyes wide in disbelief. "You lied to us," he said. You let that girl take the blame all those years, and you said nothing? Jason tried to defend himself. She never told me. I didn't know for sure. She came to you, Mariah cut in. You told me I was ruining your life. You said if I told anyone, no one would believe me. And you were right. They didn't. Jason's wife, Monica, stepped forward from the back of the room. She had come in quietly, standing near the door. Now, she walked up to him with tears in her eyes. I believed in you, she said, voice shaking. I defended you. I blamed her. But now, I see you for who you are. She took off her wedding ring and placed it gently on the table. I'm done. Jason reached for her, but she turned away and walked out. The room was silent again. Mariah took a deep breath. I didn't come here for revenge. I came to tell the truth. And now I have. She turned to leave, but Pastor Milton stood up. Wait, he said. Mariah, thank you. He looked around the room. We failed her. All of us. We protected a name instead of a person. We need to do better, not just today, but going forward. He turned to Jason. You are suspended from your leadership role effective immediately. We will begin a formal review process. Jason didn't speak. He just sat down slowly, staring at nothing. Mariah walked out of the church quietly, the door closing behind her. Outside, the evening sun was beginning to set. The air felt cool on her face. She took a long breath, looking up at the sky. For the first time in years, the weight on her chest was gone. The truth had finally spoken. The following Sunday, Mariah didn't preach. She sat quietly in the last row of the church beside her mother, who looked tired but peaceful. The whispers were still there, but they were different now, softer, more thoughtful. People glanced her way, not with judgment, but with respect. The church had begun changing. Pastor Milton announced that they were launching a new committee to support young women and single mothers in the congregation. Layla volunteered to help. A few others did too. A space that once ignored pain was now trying to become a place of healing. Jason had not returned to church. Word spread that he had moved out of his family home. His father stopped speaking in meetings for a while. His wife, Monica, filed for separation and began therapy with her children. Quietly, firmly, the damage began to break open and be faced. Mariah took time off. She focused on her mother, helping her to appointments and cooking for her every night. They spent evenings watching old movies and talking. There were hard days when Gloria could barely sit up, and Mariah would sit by her side, holding her hand, singing softly. One night, Gloria looked at her and smiled weakly. You did what I couldn't, she whispered. What do you mean? Mariah asked. You told your truth, and you helped others by doing it. Mariah nodded, tears in her eyes. I was so scared, Mama. I know, but look at you now. Mariah squeezed her mother's hand. I didn't win a battle. I just stopped running. Later that month, Mariah was invited to speak at a women's conference in a nearby city. At first, she wasn't sure if she should go. But after talking with her mother and praying quietly by herself, she agreed. She stood on the stage in front of a room full of women, young, old mothers, daughters, and shared her story. She didn't hide the hard parts. She didn't polish it to sound perfect. She spoke like she always did, honest, gentle, and clear. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then someone clapped. Then another. And then the whole room stood and clapped, not just for her story, but for her strength. Afterward, women lined up to speak with her. Some cried. Some just hugged her. One woman said, You helped me see that I still have a voice. Thank you. Back home, Micah began asking more questions. He was older now and wiser than most kids his age. One night, while doing homework, he looked up and said, Mom, do you think Dad will ever want to know me? Mariah paused. Then she answered gently, Maybe. One day. But what matters is, you already know who you are. Micah nodded. I'm proud of you. She smiled. I'm proud of you too. Eventually, Gloria passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her funeral was small and simple, just like she had wanted. Mariah gave a short message about grace, faith, and forgiveness. It was one of the hardest things she'd ever done, but she did it with peace in her heart. After the funeral, Mariah stood at her mother's graveside with Micah. The sky was clear. The wind was gentle. She protected me when no one else did, Mariah said. Micah took her hand. Now you're protecting others. Mariah looked at him, her eyes soft. Maybe that's how healing starts. One truth at a time. And as they walked away together, the church bells rang in the distance, soft, steady, and strong. Months later, Mariah stood on a quiet hill just outside town. It was where she used to come as a teenager when everything felt too heavy. She hadn't been back in years. Now, with the wind gently brushing her face, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She looked out over the town. So much had changed. Some people still whispered when she walked by, but it no longer hurt like before. Her truth was out. The shame was gone. The weight had lifted. Micah stood beside her, taller now, stronger. He had started writing poems. He said it helped him process things. Sometimes he read them to her, shy at first, then with growing confidence. He was healing too. Mariah closed her eyes and whispered a quiet prayer, not asking for anything, just giving thanks. For strength, for growth, for the silence finally turning into peace. As they walked back to the car, Micah slipped his hand into hers. "Mom," he said, "I think Grandma would be proud of you." Mariah smiled. "I hope so." He looked at her. "I know so." And in that simple moment, on that quiet hill, with her son by her side and the past finally behind her, Mariah knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had walked through shame, betrayal, and silence. Now she walked in truth, in strength, and she wasn't afraid anymore. Hey besties, thanks so much for watching till the end. If you loved this emotional ride, don't forget to like, share, comment, and hit that subscribe button for more jaw-dropping. You won't believe what's next. Her friends invited everyone except her to their girls' trip. She booked one seat beside. Stay tuned for that story. See you in the next one. Bye.